You ever notice how money feels painfully slow until suddenly it doesn't? For months, maybe years, you're grinding, saving, investing, and nothing seems to move. The numbers barely shift, the charts barely bend, and it feels like you're pushing a boulder uphill with your bare hands. And then, one day, for reasons you can't fully explain, the math flips. Your money starts growing faster than you can. It's like waking up and realizing the boulder is finally rolling on its own. The wild part? This moment doesn't happen randomly. It happens at three specific thresholds, three net worth milestones where the game changes for good. And the real question is, which milestone are you secretly closer to than you think? Welcome back to Narrative Finance, where we go beyond numbers and talk about the psychology behind wealth, the quiet turning points most people never notice, and the emotional journey that shapes your financial destiny. Today, we're breaking down something rarely talked about but absolutely life-changing: the three net worth milestones that act as financial tipping points. Not income milestones, not salary bands. Actual net worth, the point where your money stops depending on you and starts depending on itself. Most people quit long before reaching the first threshold, not because they're lazy or irresponsible, but because early wealth building feels brutally unfair. You're putting in effort, you're sacrificing, you're doing everything right, and the results seem embarrassingly small. It feels like a bad deal until the structure suddenly kicks in. Today, you'll see exactly why that happens, where the shift occurs, and how your experience of money changes at each milestone, psychologically and mathematically. Because once you understand these three numbers, you stop feeling behind and start feeling inevitable. In the beginning, building wealth feels almost insulting. You're doing the hard part, showing up, cutting expenses, resisting impulse purchases, redirecting money into investments, yet the numbers barely move. It feels like sweeping a beach with a toothbrush. And here's the psychological trap most people fall into. They assume something must be wrong. They think they're investing too little, too late, or too slowly. They compare their tiny growth to someone else's massive jump and conclude they're not naturally good with money. But nothing is wrong. What you're experiencing is exactly how compounding works in its early stages, quietly, invisibly, almost mockingly slow. Because during those early years, you are doing nearly all the work. Your contributions dominate everything. Your returns look like spare change thrown into a jar. You might look at your account and think, why am I sacrificing so much for growth that barely exists? But the truth is, your returns are not small. They're young. And young returns behave like young trees. Fragile, tiny, unimpressive. Until one day, they're not. This is the part almost everyone misunderstands. Compounding isn't powerful in the beginning. It's patient. It waits. It watches. It grows in tiny, invisible layers until one day it becomes the dominant force in your financial life. So when you feel like quitting, it's not because you're failing, it's because you're standing right before the bend in the curve. The moment your money starts working harder than you do. That slow, frustrating, painfully boring phase is not a sign of lack of progress. It's the warm-up. And the first milestone, the one that shifts everything, is closer than you think. The first real turning point in anyone's journey happens at a number most people underestimate: $10,000. It's not enough to change your lifestyle. It won't buy you freedom, a house, or early retirement, but it will change you. Because $10,000 is the moment you finally see proof that your consistency matters. It's the first time your money starts growing for reasons other than your effort. Those small green bars, the returns, begin to show up in a way you can actually feel. And the psychology of this milestone is huge. Before $10,000, you're running on discipline. After $10,000, you're running on evidence. Something in your brain shifts. You stop thinking, what's the point? And you start thinking, if this is what 10,000 can do, what happens at 50 or 100? It's also the first moment you realize why quitting early is so dangerous. If you simply stopped investing at $10,000 and let the money sit untouched, time alone would turn it into tens of thousands without you lifting a finger. It's your first glimpse of the engine inside wealth building. A small engine, sure, but a real one. A lot of people never reach this milestone Not because it's mathematically impossible, but because it's emotionally exhausting to push through the early fog where nothing seems to be working. Reaching $10,000 proves one thing above everything else. You can build wealth because you've built the habit that builds it. And once you've crossed that line, something even more powerful becomes possible. You're now close to the milestone where the ratio flips, where your money stops depending on you and starts depending on itself. That milestone is $100,000. And this is where everything accelerates. Crossing $100,000 is different. It doesn't feel like a small win. It feels like the moment the universe finally acknowledges the work you've been putting in. Because at $10,000, you were the engine. But at $100,000, time becomes the engine. Your money starts to move with a momentum you can actually see. And more importantly, a momentum you can trust. This is the milestone where the math becomes emotional. Because the growth doesn't just increase, it accelerates. You log into your account and realize your portfolio made more in a week than you used to save in a month. You see gains that required no sacrifice, no overtime, no budgeting tricks. They simply appeared because of the foundation you already built. It's the first time in your life that money feels like a partner instead of a burden. And that psychological shift changes everything. You start to breathe differently, you worry less, you stop obsessing over tiny daily expenses and start focusing on strategic decisions. You stop thinking of money as something you chase and start thinking of it as something you grow. And here's the most surprising part. The second $100,000 comes faster than the first. Every milestone after this takes less time, fewer sacrifices, and far less willpower. This is also the point where options start appearing everywhere. You can slow down contributions for a few months if you need to. You can take a risk, switch careers, travel, build something new, because your money has built enough momentum to keep growing without you holding its hand. At $100,000, your life expands. Your choices widen, your relationship with time changes. But even this milestone isn't the final turning point. There's one more. The milestone that doesn't just accelerate your growth, it transforms the way you work, live, and plan your entire future. And that milestone is the one almost everyone dreams about. But very few understand how it actually feels from the inside. The $1 million mark. $1 million. It's a number loaded with emotion, hope, envy, disbelief, ambition. But hitting this milestone feels nothing like the fantasy most people imagine, because by the time you get here, something strange has happened. It doesn't feel like winning the lottery. It feels like inevitability. Not because you're lucky, not because you're gifted, but because compounding has finally reached its fully mature form. The version people read about but rarely stick around long enough to experience. At $1 million, your money becomes a living system. You're no longer fueling the engine fuels itself. When your investments earn $80,000 in a single year, and then $86,000 the year after, and then $160,000 a decade later, you begin to understand something profound. Work becomes optional. Not because you stopped working, but because your portfolio started working harder than you ever could. It's the moment the effort you put in 10, 20, 30 years ago shows up to repay you. And the psychology of this milestone hits deeper than the math. For the first time in your life, you don't make decisions out of fear. You make them out of preference. You choose jobs for meaning, not survival. You say no to things that drain you. You say yes to things that stretch you. You think about time differently. You think about risk differently. You think about yourself differently. This is also where the 4% rule becomes more than theory. It becomes a doorway. Because at this level, withdrawing a modest percentage of your portfolio can sustain your life indefinitely, while the rest continues to grow in the background. $1 million isn't retirement. It's something more powerful. Control over your future. But here's the truth. No one tells you. You don't build $1 million for the money. You build it for who you become on the way there. Here's the part nobody warns you about. The hardest phase of wealth building isn't the math, it's the psychology. Because long before your money compounds, your identity does. You become the kind of person who follows through, the kind of person who thinks long term, the kind of person who keeps promises to their future self even when the present feels heavy. And that identity shift isn't built at $100,000 or $1 million. It's built at the $50 months, the $100 sacrifices, the moments when you're putting in effort no one else can see. This is why consistency matters more than income, more than strategy, more than timing. Anyone can invest when it's exciting. But the people who hit every milestone, 10,000, 100,000, a million, are the ones who stay in the game when it feels pointless. And if you're struggling to stay motivated, here's something to remember. Time does more heavy lifting than you ever will. You don't need perfect discipline. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need perfect strategy. You just need to avoid one thing: quitting before the curve bends. Because when you look back from the other side, from the momentum stage, from the acceleration phase, from the place where your money makes more than your job, you'll realize something almost heartbreaking. The hardest years were the most important, not because of the dollars they produced, but because of the person they shaped. And once you learn that lesson, you're ready for the final section, the emotional core of this entire journey, the part where everything comes together. At some point along this journey, something subtle, but life-changing, happens inside you. You stop counting dollars and start counting possibilities. The fear you once felt around money slowly dissolves. You breathe differently. You make decisions from a place of strength rather than scarcity. And the world, which once felt rigid and expensive, begins to feel flexible again. You start realizing that wealth isn't just about the numbers you're building. It's about the freedom those numbers unlock. The freedom to walk away from a job that drains you. The freedom to take risks that once felt impossible. The freedom to design a life based on curiosity instead of survival. And the most beautiful part? You didn't get here because of one big moment. You got here because of thousands of small ones. The days you stayed consistent. The nights you said no to impulse spending. The mornings you chose to believe the future could be different. That belief, fragile at first, unsteady, shaky, eventually became momentum. And momentum grew into discipline. And discipline became wealth. The milestones aren't just numbers. They're mirrors, reflecting back the person you've become. Someone capable of patience. Someone capable of vision. Someone capable of building a life that compounds in meaning the same way your money compounds in value. And one day, you'll look back and realize the journey didn't change because of the milestones. You changed, and that's what made the milestones possible. If today's video helped you see wealth differently, not as a finish line, but as a series of quiet transformations, then take a moment and reflect on where you are right now. Are you at the beginning, pushing through the slow, invisible phase? Are you approaching your first $10,000 and proving to yourself that you can stay consistent? Are you somewhere near $100,000, watching the momentum finally work in your favor? Or maybe you're aiming for that $1 million milestone where your money becomes a force of its own. Wherever you are, you're not behind. You're just at a different chapter. If you want more videos that help you build the mindset, not just the math, behind financial freedom, make sure you subscribe to Narrative Finance and hit the like button so this message reaches more people who need it. And before you go, tell me in the comments, which milestone are you working toward right now? And what's the biggest shift you've felt along the way? I'll see you in the next one.